Good evening, and welcome to the Mamie Keith and Eileen Bradley Educational Foundation, also known as Educate Our Youth. Educate Our Youth is the mission of Educate Our Youth is to make college more accessible through education, mentoring, professional development, and any other means available to students by offering programs such as the SAT, ACT workshops, virtual college tours, assisting with financial aid, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. Our guest this evening is Dr. Jessica Greene, a licensed professional counselor. And as a matter of fact, she has her own practice on North Myrtle Beach. And glad to have her back on the show. And so, welcome back, Jessica. Good to have you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be back.
And I am your host, Janet Keith Thompson. I'm co founder, excuse me, I'm sorry, something in my throat. I'm co founder of the Mamie Keith and Allie Bradley Education Foundation. So, we're going to talk a little bit, one second, audience. We're going to talk a little bit about the anxiety and the stressors that youth is facing today. And going back to school after summer break can be exciting, but it also can be a cause of worry and stress and anxiety in students and parents, especially after COVID-19. And in light of the current mental health crisis among young people, how should parents handle kids' continuing fears or stresses about COVID-19? And what can parents do or say to ease their anxiety?
Mhm. And I agree with you, Janet. Between COVID and the new academic year, some of our students feel as if they're being pushed back in to
Mm-hmm.
create some sense of normalcy. And for parents, there are a couple of things that I want us to keep in mind. The first would be pay attention to your child's feelings. Sometimes we tend to overlook them when they say, "Oh, my stomach hurts." "Oh, won't you go in your bedroom and lay down?" When it could
Right.
potentially, be anxiety. When they feel like they have a headache or a sense of agitation, we may say, "Why are you acting that way?" We put them in timeout. We discipline, but it may be because they're depressed. They're having difficulty learning in the classroom, difficulty coming back together, but we're overlooking those simple things. When it comes to our children, when they become anxious, agitated, annoyed, it's important for parents to remain calm.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we miss the boat a lot of times because we're so quick, to
Right.
jump because they're acting out.
Right.
Absolutely. And then in two more things, recognize and praise small accomplishments. Understanding your child's love language is extremely important as well, whether it's physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, receiving gifts, or acts of service. Because for them, they see it as you showing that you love them. And with COVID, entering the school system again, understanding the differences between fitting in and that sense of belonging is extremely important. And if you look at data, it shows children between the ages of 13 to 18 have the
Mm-hmm.
highest number of depression and anxiety. So if you dig a little deeper, those are going to be your eighth grade students leaving the middle school and transitioning into high school. And then
Exactly.
those kids who are graduating entering, 4-year college, 2-year college, workforce, and military. So
Mm-hmm.
there are a couple of points in there where our children are trying to figure out who they are and where they're going and where they belong. And a lot of times we talk about that platinum rule and that golden rule. The golden rule is always treat people the way you want to be treated,
Of course.
and one of my mentors shared the platinum rule is to treat others the way they want to be treated because language or the way you want to be treated may be physical touch and quality time. But for me, I may like words of affirmation, which gives me
Mm-hmm.
that encouragement, which allows me when I feel anxious, I can use that positive self talk as the sense of encouragement. So when I go to school, I'm there. When I go to school, I have that sense of belonging. When I go to school, I can actually learn and remain engaged in the classroom. And for my parents, lastly, James Baldwin has a wonderful quote. He said, "Children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they never
Mm-hmm.
fail to imitate them." So they're
Mm-hmm.
watching us, they're watching our reaction, they're watching our impulsive behaviors. when it comes to COVID, when it comes to the beginning of the school year. And for some parents, it was on the local news, the school bus. That was the issue concern getting these kids home, well, to and from school. So if we
Right.
see the parent agitated and annoyed between COVID, between, the bus situation, that's going to increase that student's anxiety and
Exactly.
depression as well.
Exactly. And with COVID, I mean, kids are back in school. The president says COVID is over, but it's not over. It's still a part of our everyday lives. So I guess some people using the term a new norm. This is a new normal, moving on with our lives, but with the fact that we still can contract COVID. And
Absolutely.
there's some children, and but not no fault of their own, but that parents did not get them vaccinated, and they're attending school. So what do you tell your child who's been vaccinated that's attending school and learns that Joey wasn't vaccinated and Joey's sitting across from her, in the classroom? How do you relieve that stress with them?
I would say focusing on those variables that we can control and not those that we can't control, but being able to control our reaction to those variables we can't control. And that's great, Janet, because if we think about it, when it comes to things that we can control, will be making sure we wash our hands,
Mm-hmm.
making sure we try to remain at a distance from others, make sure we
Right.
use hand sanitation because everybody's not going to do that. So
Right.
it's going to be important for us that we focus on those things that we can control and that we're doing it because we can tell our kids every day this is what you need to do, but they're also going to have to hold themselves accountable and understand that everyone is not vaccinated and being that the use of masks are not in the classroom. When we talk about
Mhm.
social distancing, it no longer exists. So that student and that child is going to have to take that initiative and be proactive so we're not in a reactive situation where we
Right.
been exposed.
And some children are living with parents that was exposed, and some of themselves have been exposed to COVID. Um, and I find that, but COVID brought on a lot of changes within the family structure. One of them being financial, hard times. A lot of people became unemployed, and the stimulus kicked in, yes, but there was some weeks in there that they didn't know which way was up. And when you're raising children and you're going through a financial situation, how should you address that with the children? I do think children should have some idea of what's going on. How do you think? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And they should have some idea what's going on, but in the same breath, we have to limit what we share with them
Okay.
because they're already anxious. And if they
Mhm.
um, know or too much information, that's going to increase their anxiety. And at that token as well, they're going to feel as if, okay, what can I do? I need to do more. I need to do more. I need to do more. But what they need to do is just make sure they're attending school, make sure they're checking
Yeah.
that Power School app, checking those grades, because what they can do is do their part on the education level. Making
Right.
sure when they come home they're doing their chores, that we're
Mhm.
delegating them between family members, and for parents, when we sit at the table, talk about the importance of gratitude. Talk about the importance of I'm thankful for what I have and not
Yeah.
think about what I don't
Go
have.
ahead.
So we
Right.
can go around the table and I call it two roses and a thorn. We can talk about two positive things that's going on or two positive things that we're two things we're grateful for, and then one thorn, one thing that may not be going too well. And the purpose of that is to turn that thorn into a rose. Because
Rose.
when we're sitting
Okay.
around our family, they may have an idea that we haven't even thought about in order to turn that thorn into a rose. But the
Mhm.
importance of gratitude.
Do you think that well, there was a mental health issue before with our children before the pandemic? Do you think it's worsened since the pandemic? Because children were cutting themselves and being suspended from school and getting into fights and things of that nature, and not just children that's been diagnosed with behavior problems. I mean, just ordinary students. So you think mental health has worsened since the pandemic?
I think as far as mental health, it continues to be that wave because
Okay.
before the pandemic, we had issues and concerns. During the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, there was really no one there to report it. The parent is at work. or the
Right.
parent is home being the caregiver to that grandparent. The grandparent is home being that caregiver to those grandchildren. She's having to come out of retirement. So there was really no reporting there. The
Okay.
parents might have seen it, but when it comes to, maybe possibly scheduling appointments or notifying the appropriate individuals, there were some gaps in there. So I believe it's still the same, but just with COVID, everyone is at home and
Yeah.
it's not being reported or the parent can't see it because by the time they get home from work, it's time to review homework and, get ready for bed. But it comes in waves, but it's still there.
Yeah, because I know I read or heard somewhere during the pandemic while children was home that the child abuse went up more because parents wasn't able to cope, with what was going on, and so the children would take the brunt of what was happening in their lives. So for teenagers that's dealing with that, what would you tell them?
As far as teenagers that are dealing with it's accessibility, we would
Yeah.
say in a sense, um, making sure we're doing the best that we can in school, make sure we're doing the best that we can at home, having
Mhm.
that support system. And if our parent asks us to do something, instead of having that negative reaction, just do it.
Yeah.
When it comes to our siblings, that sibling rivalry, I'm sure was real during COVID because everyone's at the house
Yes.
on their electronic device trying to complete their assignments. And it's important for us and for parents and kids to remember just to let it go. I always tell my clients all the time, just like Elsa and Anna said, let it go, let it
Mhm.
go.
Yeah.
It's nothing you can do about it at this point. Just focus on those things that we can control and those things that we cannot control our reactions so they do not get the best of us.
Right. And we talked about earlier in this conversation about children acting out as what are the forms of anxiety can those children display so that parents will know what to look for?
Absolutely. And with anxiety and depression, I kind of call them sisters and brothers, cousins, because a lot of times they intertwine with each other. So you
Right.
may see anxiety, a symptom of anxiety, and maybe one of depression, or they're feeling that way because of the depression or because of the anxiety. But I would definitely say sleeping problems and inability to fall asleep, stay asleep, or they're a really early riser, feeling that
Hmm.
sense of restlessness. Those ones who can't sit still,
Okay.
concentrating difficulties. They're not able to concentrate in school because they're focusing on possibly things that are going on at home.
Hmm.
Or in the middle school and high school, there's such a huge transition there. There may be some form of bullying, or harassment of that student. Frequent worries where they feel scared. Irritability, again, being super cranky. Muscle tension, where they may also feel a little jittery at times
Okay.
and a sense of fatigue when they're tired, but they've slept all night, but
Yeah.
they're still have that sense of being tired.
In the event there's any teachers listening to this program, how how should that work between teacher and student? Teacher knowing that the student, is back in school. I'm sure she's aware of the virtual, all for 2 years almost. What can advice can you give her um, when she see a child experiencing some of those things you just named?
Yes, and for teachers, stress and anxiety is real for them as well.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's a stressful profession. Your day does not start at 7:30 and at 3:20.
Right.
There's that's unrealistic expectations of a teacher.
Hmm.
um and then also on top of that, they have state exams, they have national exams that they have to get their students prepared for, and based on those students test scores is a result of their teaching abilities, and
Right.
that's a hard one there because you have an awesome teacher but the kids do not score well. It's a reflection of that teacher. so
Yes.
um so along with that, some tips for teachers, I like to tell them to buddy up, find another teacher. Maybe it's your next door neighbor, but that person you can go to and speak with them. And I call it our personal board of directors. So it's at least I call it the
Okay.
Fab Five. So maybe those
Right.
five people who are worthy to hear your story, meaning that whatever you tell them It's not going to go to Joe, John, Sally, and Harry. What we talk about stays in our circle. And also get up, get out, and get moving, because we're in that
Mm-hmm.
classroom all day. So being able to get some of that fresh air and even practice mindfulness will be extremely important. Um, and also not isolating yourself, again, butting up with someone, and
Okay.
prioritizing your mental health. Remembering you are not a robot, but you are human. You continue to
Right.
have your needs. You
Right.
continue, um, if you have to, medication management. Do you have to be on medication forever? No, but it will assist you to be able to manage that anxiety,
Cool. Yeah.
and or that depression. Yes,
Okay.
because just like the kids get anxious, come back to school, the teachers are in the same boat.
Yes, they are. They are. And going back to the children, how parents should check in with their children's feelings sometime. Just ask them, I would think, what's going on, how you feeling today, how was your day? I think that, and if there's something going on with the kids, hopefully they would open up to the parents and let them know what happened to that day at school or after
Mhm.
school.
Yes, and I will also recommend, whenever we are communicating with our children, start sentences with what or how. When we start
Okay.
with why are you doing that? Why do you have this grade? It's more victim thinking. So it's like we're blaming them. When we say
Yeah.
when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? It's more that, procrastination. And
Okay.
also when we focus on who did this, it's that blame game. And,
Okay.
middle school, high school, elementary, they're not going to tell you who did what, because they
Right.
feel like we're finger pointing and it's the blame game. So I would definitely say with communication, focus on those what and those how questions. So you're not getting those simple answers. No, I don't know. I can't remember. But when you ask
Those
what
are
and
the
how,
common answers. Yeah.
yes, you're able to communicate more,
Yeah.
communicate more with them.
So, how do you teach your child to be a self advocate during this process?
Getting rid of that sense of shame,
Okay.
allowing them and promote their ability to be courageous even when they don't want to. Build those connections with those teachers, build that connection with
Mhm.
that bus driver, cafeteria. The motto, it takes a village, it takes a village.
Village, right.
And also having compassion and empathy, because everybody
Mhm.
has their own story. And if we're compassionate, we have empathy, we could put ourselves in those shoes and realize, hey, they may be going through some things. So let me have sympathy. I'm saying, let me have empathy versus sympathy. Sympathy is like,
Right.
oh my gosh, this happened. But empathy, what can I do to help?
Hmm.
So I would say focus on those pillars: being courageous, having connections, um, and being courageous, but also allowing them to know vulnerability doesn't have to be a negative thing.
Right.
Being able to express your feelings. And as parents and teachers, controlling our nonverbal cues, because if our
Yes.
child comes to us and tell us something, internally we're shocked. But if they see that calm body
And not that
expression,
expression on that face, right?
that's right. When you go in your bedroom, in your bathroom, do whatever you want to do. But when you're in front of that child, keep it together, because
Hmm.
your response is going to determine if they ever come back to you again. And what you don't want to do is your child to go get advice from somebody else
Right.
rather than you.
Exactly. Would you encourage extracurricular activities during this time process of children?
I
You
would.
think that would be a stress reliever?
It would be a stress reliever. And definitely, whenever you decide to volunteer for an organization, make sure you're aware of their COVID policies. But that also allows that sense of community engagement,
Hmm.
so they can be able to socialize. Because with
Right.
COVID, we lost that sense of socialization. We lost
Mhm.
that sense of building connection, and for teachers, when they, um, during COVID, I'm sure they might have FaceTime, their next door neighbor with their coffee, just to have that sense of connection with them.
Mhm, mhm.
But, definitely community engagement, community involvement, and that also looks great on your academic resume when you're applying
It
for post-secondary.
right, it really does help, and COVID did bring that on, and a lot of people, including myself, of being, alone, all day, and so I had to find things to do, and then when the gym closed up, well, the gym didn't close, but I stopped going because, COVID was so spreadable at that particular time, and so you just stayed afraid of catching anything.
Mhm.
I would venture to the grocery store every now and then. So, and I'm sure that this is something that kids being at home during the school year, and they're on a computer, and if they weren't able to get out and play in the yard, or did mom take them to the park, or um, that's enough to depress you,
It
even as
is.
an adult. If you can't get out and spread your wings a little bit and then smell the fresh air. So, what positive tips would you give parents in reference to working with their kids with their stress and anxieties and themselves?
There's an activity that I like to do, and it's called red light, green light, yellow light. So whenever you see your child getting into that, um, those nonverbal cues, the sense of isolation, the agitation, red light is code. Let's stop. What's causing us to feel this way?
Okay.
What has happened today to make us feel this way? The yellow light will be, let's think of some solutions. What are some things we can think about to solve this issue concern? And green light means, just a green light means whenever we see it in our vehicles, we go for it and we take action. So that's
Right.
going to be that step of, okay, this is what I need to do to be the best of me. And also positive affirmations. I'm a big one with positive affirmations. So maybe in the bathroom, which is that place we go to at least twice a day, in the morning and then before we go to bed, writing positive affirmations on that bathroom mirror.
Okay.
And maybe possibly in color, because color brings life and excitement. So if we're going
Mm-hmm.
in the bathroom and we're just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go to school, we get in that bathroom, we cut that light on, and we see those positive affirmations on that bathroom mirror, and we see them every day, and we tell ourselves that every day. When we do get in those moments of adversity, we're able to remember those positive affirmations for
Right.
us to be able, to excel to the next level. And as parents, being able to transition
Mm-hmm.
from work to home,
Yes.
from being that, coworker, colleague, to being that mom, that
Mm-hmm.
wife or that husband. So when you're in that car traveling home, allow yourselves to transition. So when you get home, you can be the best of you for them. Because
Right.
if you don't take care of yourself as a parent, you're no good to them. We
Right.
talk about the kids with sense of isolation, agitation, and annoyance. Parents go through the same thing.
They
And
do.
yeah, and we have to make sure we're doing what we need to do, because as we mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier, they only imitate and mimic what we do. Because if
Right.
they see us do it, they say, it's okay. My mama does it. My dad does it. My grandparent does it. So being able to keep ourselves in check and keep our selves in line, holding ourselves accountable the same way we're holding them accountable.
Exactly, exactly. I know when I was working years ago, when I would get off from work, it was an 8 to 5. I would get home and just give myself 30 minutes.
Hmm.
I would give myself 30 before I said anything to the kids. Of course, I would speak to them coming in, but before okay, why you didn't enter the trash, or, that kind of stuff, I would just give myself 30 minutes to just relax and unwind. And then I would get dressed for home and go in the kitchen and cook, and that during that time we would talk, my boys and I, and we would always sit down for dinner. That was another thing that I did with my sons, and they would tell me what happened during the daytime, because we didn't. Nowadays everybody eat everywhere, but I didn't. When I was growing up, we all sat at the dining room table, and I did the same thing with my sons, so we can have that conversation as to what happened today at school, anything I need to know about, those kind of things. So it's good to unwind, give yourself a little bit of time, and then deal with this, with what you have to deal with in the home. That was how I did
Yes,
it.
and that's a great example too, because that became the norm. So they knew, all right, mama come home, give her 30 minutes, and she's all ours.
Right, right, right. Exactly, exactly. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Oh, thank you so
Um,
much. I
yeah,
look forward to it.
yeah, yeah. I'm looking for you could be on, and you gave some great information, and hopefully that there are parents out that's listening, because I do know that kids they're going through some stressors right now. You'd be surprised, even those that are not in high school or not in college. They're all going through some stressors, and if parents can be there, be a ear, for them, would help them, I think, to maintain and keep functioning, and don't give up on them, you
That's
know.
right.
Yeah. And don't give up on yourself either.
Mhm.
But listen, but thank you, Jessica. Glad to have
Absolutely.
you. And you have a good afternoon, a good evening, I
Thank
should
you.
say. All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.